Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the AmandaFest podcast, where our mission is simple. It's to inspire and empower our audience to take aligned action towards their dream lives, whatever that looks like for them. I'm so excited to introduce my friend Alexis Bates today. She is a psychotherapist and a somatic practitioner. She's the founder of Alchemy by Alexis, where she helps young adults heal their nervous system, step into deeper levels of embodiment, and grow in their spirituality. She believes that by healing our nervous system, tapping into our fullest embodiment, and connecting with the divine, we can transform ourselves and, in turn, the world around us. Today, we have a lovely menu of topics we'll be diving into. We're going to be covering nervous system healing, embodiment. We're going to talk about embodiment through dance, alcohol-free lifestyle, building soul-aligned friendships, and community. I'm so excited. But as we've done with every episode, before we dive into this juicy conversation, I just want to take a second for us all to get present, get in our bodies, just drop in to the here and now so that we're able to absorb all the juice that is about to unfold. So, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, if it's safe to do so, I just invite you to close your eyes and notice your breath. I always like to put a hand on my heart and a hand on my belly just to remind myself that I'm here and in my body. Notice your breath going in and out. Not trying to change it or do anything, just noticing it. Notice if you're holding tension anywhere in your body, your neck and shoulders, maybe in your jaw. Feel free to roll it out, give it a little massage. Whatever your body's craving, feel free to give it what it's asking for. We're just going to take a couple nice cleansing breaths in, thinking about something that we want to call in. And with every exhale, we're going to think of something we're ready to let go of. We're going to do 3 sets of these. And then on that last exhale out, I want you to feel comfortable to make some noise, shake it out, and really just fully release. So let's do those 3 together. Hold it at the top and out. Second breath in. And out. Feel free to make some noise on this last one. Nice deep breath in. And out. Woo! Welcome. Welcome to AmandaFest. Welcome to your bodies. And welcome, Alexis. Hi.
I'm so happy to be here, and I'm so honored that you asked me to come on.
I'm so happy that you're here. You know, it's really funny, guys. We hopped on a few minutes ago to do our little pre-show chat. I always thought that Alexis and I had met at an event in LA. In my mind, I just remembered meeting her at this venue in Venice. And I just found out that we are only internet friends.
To both of our surprise, we're like, wait, we don't actually know each other in real life. This is our first time interacting, but our energies, we just felt each other the whole time.
It's just the freaking power and the beauty of the internet. And when you show up with authenticity and actually are sharing your true soul's mission and calling in a really beautiful and authentic way, it allows like-minded people to find you. And
I
thus,
literally can't miss you. I think in 2022, I was either just moving to California or I was still living in Hawaii when you added me, which is so random because I was in either SoCal or Hawaii, which isn't LA. But for whatever reason, we just connected.
I'm so happy that we did. I am like one of the biggest fans of your social media. I love absolutely everything you post. I think it's so informative, but you're also so embodied in the work that you do and the way that you share and express all of the things that you teach is just so amazing. So I would love if you could give our listeners a little peek into what you do. Like, what is
Well,
embodiment? What is Alchemy by Alexis? Can you kind of give us some coloring on that?
yeah. So traditionally trained as a psychotherapist and went to grad school, did the whole standard route of how you would want to show up in that way. And I was also doing my own inner work, my own therapy and things. And there was this element of something was missing the mark for me. I was talking a lot about how I was feeling, but I wasn't feeling better. I was really sharing, like, and being vulnerable with my therapist of like, this is what I'm having anxiety about. This is what's coming up. But then I would come back every week or every other week and have a lot of the similar problems and a lot of the similar things. And even as a practicing therapist, I wasn't seeing the depth or the results that I was really honestly wanting for my clients. And I was frustrated because I was like, I have all these skills, I have all these tools, I'm doing all these like cognitive methods and we're making changes, but it's just, it felt like it was taking so long and it felt like I was missing something going on. And I started getting curious about what that something was. And in grad school, I read like The Body Keeps Score and some books surrounding the component of the body and the nervous system. But when I actually started paying attention to my own nervous system, I was like, ooh, like there's a lot here and there's a lot underneath because I might go somewhere and share something with my therapist or a client might share something with me. And they might say one thing, but your body might be saying something totally different. And so I started getting really curious about that and it led me down the world of my own somatic healing and my own somatic liberation. And then I was like, it would be such a disservice not to get trained in this and get trained as in depth as I possibly can get trained in it and then offer it to the world because I was like, this is the thing that shifted everything with my therapy journey, with my inner work, with my own trauma, anxiety, depression, all of these different things. Healing was getting into the body and being really anchored in feeling so comfortable and, like I said, liberated in my own body.
I absolutely love that. What is somatic? What does that mean?
Yeah. So the root of somatic, the word is soma, which means the body. And so what I do is somatic experiencing. So it's the experiencing of the body. And this is a big piece of what I was talking about with what's underneath. So it's like you might be telling me a story and you might be saying one thing, but your body might be saying something different. So we're really tuning into the subtleties of what's actually going on when you talk about something you experienced or talk about how you're feeling about something, because sometimes it's incongruent. So you might say, I'm totally over that breakup. And then your body might be saying, ooh, I actually feel really shut down when I think about dating again. Those are two different things. And that's just like a grounded example of how that could look.
No, it's so helpful. I felt really called to you specifically because when I was able to connect to my body and learned about somatic movement and somatic connection, it changed the whole fucking game for me, like entirely.
Yeah. And it's this idea that we can't get there through thought alone. And so there's a really beautiful quote that I always think back to, which is overthinking is underfeeling. And so a lot of times, if your mind is in that spiral and you're stuck in those thoughts, there's something there that we're not actually feeling or not actually allowing ourselves to be with. And when I say be with, I mean learn to, it's not just sit with, it's learn to move with, learn
Yeah.
to dance with, learn to sing with, like some sort of expression to move it through you. Cause I think you hear that, oh, sit with it. And a lot of people go to therapy and they're like, my therapist told me to sit with the feeling. And they're like, well, what the heck does that actually even mean? And sometimes it is, sitting with it and seeing what happens when you notice, like, ooh, big thing in my chest. I'm going to sit with that and see if it can naturally disperse because a lot of times it will if we're able to sit with it. But sometimes we do have to do things like move with it. And that's what a lot of
Yeah.
what we're so passionate about is being able to move with emotion. I think it's a big part of both of our medicine.
I love this. I actually used to do this thing. I intellectualized my emotions instead of feeling them. That was my thing. I could talk to my therapist for days. I could yap and yap and yap and yap. And I wasn't even feeling any of what I was talking about whatsoever. I was so disconnected from the thoughts of what was happening that it wasn't until I started doing alternative work outside of cognitive behavioral therapy that I made the mistake where I tried to take the somatic work that I was doing and brought it back to integrate with my cognitive behavioral therapist. And she had no idea because she wasn't trained in that. And so I think it's so beautiful that you're trained in both because I feel like there's such a need for the work that you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have clients too that like I'm primarily somatic, even though I have my psychotherapy background. But I have clients that say, hey, I really want to do a talk coaching session today. And they're like, I need to talk through this. And we'll still drop into the body a little. Like we can't completely dismiss
Yeah.
that, but it will be less like somatics is the bottom up approach. You're looking at the body and then going up. And a lot of traditional psychotherapy is top down. And so sometimes you might need more of that top down of like, this thing happened and I need to like vocalize or express it once or tell my story once before we dive into the story the body has to say. And that can be very freeing too. But I'm very similar to yourself. And that's why I specialize in working with people that are commonly intellectualizing and things and are really stuck
Yeah.
in their heads and get them more in their body because I had a PhD in that. I always joke that I was that client. I just would be able to have so much self-awareness, so much insight
Yeah.
without ever actually getting full relief because I was talking around instead of actually stepping in
100%.
and being like, oh, that's big. And there's a lot there. And there's that fear a lot of times that if I feel this, I'll never stop feeling it, or I'll never stop crying, or I'll become really depressed. And usually it's like what liberates us is being able to be like, I can fully feel this and I can go there with all of the darkest parts or all of the parts that I maybe don't prefer to be in.
It's what we resist persists, right? It's like just because you're not feeling it doesn't mean it's not there. It's going to show up in other places and other ways. I actually have a question for you.
Yeah.
So I've heard this before, but I'm curious like what the actual science behind it is. That I heard this thing that was talking about emotions and it was saying that an emotion only is meant to last for like, what is it, like 2 or 3 minutes. And then anything past that amount of time is just a story that you're telling yourself that keeps you stuck in the emotion. Can you talk about
Yeah.
that?
Yeah. 30 to 60 seconds is
Yeah.
honestly like can be how quick it can go. And a lot of that is, I always remind people that there's a quote that says, if it's hysterical, it's historical. And so if you have a hysterical,
Whoa.
like a big reaction to something, it's usually based in your history and based in your nervous system and it's patterned in there. And so I know it's like treat folks.
Got chills all over my body. And tears.
Yeah. And so with that, it's like if you're having a reaction that is lasting longer than that, there's usually this like historical component in your nervous system that's really, like I said, patterned in there. Where whenever you feel, let's say maybe someone cuts you off in traffic, and maybe that makes you feel not considered. And maybe it's not really about that thing in that moment, but there's a bigger hook in there that makes
Yeah.
you feel like your needs don't matter and you weren't considered. And that's the piece that's historical and that's in there. And so it might be a tiny moment, but all of a sudden your biology is responding like it's so much bigger and you're holding on to it like it's so much bigger, but it's really just your nervous system responding in that way, ultimately trying to find a corrective experience to heal some of those protective responses to be able to not have that be the response. Because realistically, if someone cuts us off, it should be like a 30 seconds of like, oh, that sucked. That was
Yeah.
annoying. That was scary, maybe. But we should be able to move on from it relatively quickly and not have it carry with us throughout the rest of the day or the rest of the car ride or
Yeah.
whatever. But a lot of times in examples like that, we're reacting for a lot longer. And usually that's an indication that there's something much bigger underneath.
Oh, I love this stuff. When I first started learning about all this, I was just like, why didn't anyone tell me? Like, why didn't we know this when we were
I
younger?
mean, it would have saved me just a lot of like, not even just time, but it would have saved me a lot of hurt and things. Like, I
Yeah.
wish that I would have found it earlier, and it all finds us at the
Perfect
divine
timing.
time. And so,
Yeah.
if this is your first time hearing about somatic experiencing, there's just so much there to unravel. And I think with that, really looking at how your nervous system responds in different areas of your life is a great place to start. If you find yourself really shut down in a certain area of your life, or really anxious in a certain area of your life, or really like you want to run away. Those are good indicators that for whatever reason, your nervous system isn't perceiving that area of your life as safe. Whereas maybe your work life, you feel super secure and you feel super regulated. But then when it comes to taking a step forward with dating, maybe you're like, I'm completely shut down, or I'm very, very anxiously attached. And it's really hard to think about your partner abandoning you or not being there for you in that way.
When it comes to making any big radical shifts in your life, the number one thing and the first thing is just that awareness. Cause I feel like so much of what we do is just autopilot that we
Yep.
just don't even know. And then that's when I think things catch us off guard, right? Like, a certain emotion or reaction. I've had times in my life where somebody will do something and it'll like gut punch me. And I'm like, why am I so upset? Like, what is going on here?
Yeah. No, absolutely. I think that's a lot of it. And that's why somatic work and embodiment work is something that it isn't something that everyone's able to do overnight. We can't just learn it
Yeah.
overnight. It's like a remembering that happens over time because when you are embodied, meaning present in your body and fully there in your body, that's a conscious practice that you have
Yeah.
to practice every single day. And of course, you cannot be present 100% of the day because you just wouldn't want to be to begin with. But you can move the needle to be more present over time. And I think
Yeah.
that's really important to know that you don't just like pick it up one day. You literally have to be in devotion to your body
I
over and over and over again.
I feel like I'm a really funny case study for this because I was dissociated and disconnected from my body for a really, really, really long time. And then I came back online and then I started movement and dance and all this other stuff. I'm at a point now where I'm definitely embodied. But when I was starting that process of coming back home to my body, anytime I would feel an emotion, good, bad, whatever it was, I would get so excited. Like somebody would do something and it would make me mad or it would make me sad. And I would be like, yeah, I'm feeling it.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful. And I think you're speaking to something that is so real. What you're describing with some of those states of feeling numb, that's that dorsal vagal state where you're like shut down. And there's this really interesting model that talks about how we essentially, to get out of that dorsal state, that state of shutdown, we have to move through the other states. So a lot of times after people have been depressed or out of their body for a really long time, they'll move through that sympathetic state and they'll get mad or they'll get frustrated or they'll be more irritable or whatever. And then really ultimately that's moving you up the like polyvagal ladder is what it's called, moving you up the polyvagal ladder to a ventral vagal state, which is regulation. But we have to move through that sometimes. And so sometimes people are like, I was depressed for years and now I'm so pissed off at the world. And so I'm not getting better. And it's like, well, actually, you are getting better.
Yeah.
It's just like you have to go through that. And that's necessary to get that full spectrum. And then now where you're probably landing is more able to access bliss and ease and peace and all of those beautiful things that are in that ventral vagal state and move towards that. But that's not the first things that come back online after we've been depressed. We don't go straight to like bliss and ecstasy. We go into being like, wow, I experienced a lot to be that shut down for that long and to be that out of my body. And so it can be uncomfortable and quite jarring actually to get out of that state. And I've seen it happen a lot with myself and others.
I would love for you to touch on that duality of, I think so many people, you see online, you see on social media, everybody's seeking this euphoric life. They want to be living their best life. And I think there is some confusion out there with the concept of toxic positivity and good vibes only, all that type of energy, which you and I both know is
Yeah.
total bullshit. But I think it's helpful and important for people to understand the why of, like you were just talking about, that once you get online and you have access to all these feelings and these emotions, you can't have access to the bliss and the ecstasy without having access to the other end of the spectrum,
Yeah.
right?
But I think the important piece here is all of these nervous system states are protective states that our body goes into based on threat or perceived threat. And so a real threat or perceived threat. And so we want every single one of these nervous system states. We don't want to not have access to any of them. Like I want to be able to yell at someone if I need to protect myself. I want to be able to run away from someone if I need to protect myself. Those are necessary to be able to get in. This idea that we're only regulated all the time is just false because you need to be able to have those fluctuations and those different states from a biological standpoint. So our bodies, through this beautiful process called neuroception, always looking to be like, hey, is this an actual dangerous threat or a perceived dangerous threat? And if it is, can I go into one of these different states in response? And that's really beautiful. And with the nervous system work, it's like capacity for it all. So it's not just your capacity for feeling into those feelings of anxiety or feelings of sadness. It's also, you can deepen the bliss and all of those
Yeah.
things that you want to. There's a beautiful quote that says something along the lines of your degree to meet the darker parts of yourself. So the parts of yourselves you want to avoid is also your degree to be with all the things that people are seeking for, or like going for those high vibes
Yeah.
or like good vibes and like, high vibrations and things.
Yeah.
But with that, you can't get to any of that if you are not willing to look at these nervous system states or these shadow aspects of self or parts of self. Like the more you can look at those and the more you can liberate yourself and actually be sustainably happy and blissful and not just in a way that's like, oh, I'm just pretending this isn't here, because that's completely ignoring the biology and the nervous system, because sometimes our
Yeah.
nervous system is mad or is frustrated, and that's real and raw. And sometimes we need to express that and move that through our system so that we can come to more bliss, more peace.
I love that. For me, when I dance, it's like, it's so nice because I intellectualized my emotions for so long. I wasn't feeling them, right? So I would just talk about things and I'd be like, yeah, yeah, I understand that, blah, blah. When I dance, it's kind of the exact opposite, where I am laughing, I'm crying, I'm like screaming, I'm grunting, I'm like hitting the floor. This is ecstatic dance, guys. If you've never been, you gotta go. It's amazing. But like, you're going through all of those feelings. And if you asked me, what was that? I'd be like, I don't know. Couldn't tell you. It was in there. There was some
And you don't have
stuff
to
in there.
know. Yeah.
And so it's just funny how we have the capacity as human beings to like go to both ends of the spectrum. There was something in here and it needed to move, and I found new ways to move it. And
Good.
so yeah, I'd love
What
to hear
is,
about your journey with dance and
yeah.
what that's been like for you.
Yeah, that is such a beautiful way to articulate it and put it, because that's a lot of what happens in somatic sessions, where it's like you might not know exactly what you're moving, like what energy is moving through your like you're shaking, you're releasing. It's the same thing when you're dancing. You don't always have to know. The story is, it's not less important. It just isn't vital to being able to release it. And so in an experience like that, like what's happening is you're somatically releasing things, and you don't have to know if it was related to something when you were younger or not. If you feel better, that's how you know you've been doing something. And
Yeah.
that's like the gift of like dance and movement. And yeah, it's like such a practice to be able to be so devoted to really letting the music or the experience take you and move you and be like, I am unattached to what this has to be, what this has to look like, how I have to show up. And I'm just going to be so devoted to being in my body that I'm just going to let whatever needs to come through just come through and move through. And that's going to look different every single time. But to answer your question about dance in general, I spoke about this pretty recently on my Instagram, but there is a quote that says, if you feel uncomfortable dancing in public, you should be dancing more and not
Yeah.
less. And that really spoke to me, because a few years ago, I didn't really dance. I've always been an active person. I've always been like soccer, cross country, lots of movement, strength training, things like that with my body, but never dance. So growing up, my sister was in dance and cheer, and she's older than me, and she hated it. She was a tomboy. She was like, nope, I don't want to be in this. So she removed herself from those activities. And so my parents were like, yeah, like I bet Alexis is the same. She's not gonna like cheer. She's not gonna like dance. We're just gonna put her in the other activities. And so I never really got into that. And so then I come into my adult life, and the only time I would dance is if I was drinking. And so it would just be like, that was when I would dance. But it was like, other than that, I wouldn't. And then all of a sudden I started getting really curious about that, because I started doing my somatic training a few years ago. And I was just like, why is this making me so uncomfortable? Or like, why do I not want to dance unless there's alcohol involved? And really getting curious about that and viewing it as an opportunity of like, I'm just going to dance as much as possible. I'm just going to say yes to the DJ sets, go to the concerts, go to the live music things, and I'm just going to dance, and I'm just going to see what happens. And I'm also going to dance on my own. And I think that's a really solid place to start if people are like, oh my God, this makes me so uncomfortable to dance. It's to be able to be like, in the privacy of your own space, start a dance practice. And if you can totally be in complete confidence and embodiment in your own space, that is creating this option in your nervous system of how to move, how to dance, how to express. And then you can take that with you. You're writing those codes into your nervous system when you're doing it alone to be able to be like, this is what embodiment feels like. This is what confidence feels like.
Mm,
And so
mhm.
you're really giving yourself that option. And the more you do it, the easier it becomes. And now I'm someone that like all of my friends, everyone in my life knows that like, if there is music, I am dancing. And
Yeah.
I'm the first one on the dance floor. I have a couple of friends that like, we just will get down and we will just dance like no one's watching. And it's just like real fun, but it's such a difference to where I was before. I've now been owning that I feel like I'm a dancer. I own that now. And I'm like, I love dancing. I'm a dancer, whatever. But I didn't grow up with that. I don't have a family that has all this music history or rhythm and all these things. It's something that the more that I've practiced, the more I've fallen in love with it. And again, it's not how it looks, but it
Yeah.
also can look so beautiful as well the more you do it. So,
Oh, I love that story. I think one of the common misconceptions about dance in general is that, like, to your point, people are like, "Oh, well, I don't dance. I don't know how to dance." They're worried about how they're going to be perceived.
right.
Whereas to get to a place in which you don't care how it looks, it doesn't matter how it looks. It's just about how it feels inside of your body. Because to your point too, like if it feels good, it's gonna look good. It's not about that, but when I see people dancing that are really feeling themselves and they're in it, it doesn't matter what their technical ability is. If they feel good, you are like, it's
It's
magnetizing.
magnetizing and it's embodiment too. And I think that's usually my intention anytime I'm on a dance floor. If there's a DJ set or there's music playing and I'm planning to be there for a while, it's like, how in devotion can I be to my body while also
Mm.
maintaining connection with people around me too? And so it's like
Yes.
two, one, yeah.
Those are my favorite topics. I actually would really love to hear you touched a little bit on like the alcohol, no alcohol. I don't know if you're fully sober, kind of sober, whatever it is. If you want to share, amazing. But also interested to hear about your relationship with alcohol and going out and bringing this type of work, the embodiment practices to places like a rave or a festival that aren't necessarily conscious spaces. But yeah, I'd love to hear your
Yeah.
experience with that.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like I really have experienced, I always say I've really experienced the full spectrum of the party scene and all of that because I definitely had a phase where I wasn't on my embodiment journey yet. I had woken up spiritually, but I still wasn't fully there where I hadn't done the somatic work. So it's like everything I was holding from my past was so heavy that it was just so easy to numb. It was so easy to numb. It was so easy to use alcohol, these sorts of things. And I had a really not great relationship with it. And it was a lot of my college years. And anyone that knew me then, it's like I was a different human because of it. And I was always, very kind, very social, all those sorts of things. But it was such a numbing agent. And it was so incongruent with my authenticity, which is something that I grew into. And ultimately, a lot of it is because my body just wasn't super agreeing with it. I was literally just like, I am so hungover. I don't feel good. This isn't resonating. But the more that I realized that and took a step back, and this is in grad school and the years after grad school, started taking a step back, started to be more intentional. I was like, oh my God, I actually don't need this. I'm actually super social. I actually really like hanging out with people and doing things sober. And it started to be more of like a learned skill or something that I was learning to do. And I think this speaks back to the confidence piece that we were talking about earlier, confidence when dancing. It's practice. Being socially confident. If you have social anxiety, the medicine isn't to go out less. The medicine is to be able to engage more. And so it's the same thing with like going and doing something alcohol free. And I've been alcohol free for almost a year, but I before that was very loosely drinking a few times a year. So it's really been like the last probably 3 years of my life that I've been engaging very moderately to not at all. And it's a learned thing similar to embodiment and dance, where you have to really think about, like, okay, how would a person act that was alcohol free, that was out and wanted to have fun and wanted to bring the energy, wanted to still be able to be in their authenticity and in their bigness and all of that when they're out, and then become that person, because it's like so possible to not give up your social life and also be alcohol free. If anything, it's probably deepened my social life because I actually remember and know people on such a full level because I'm fully there and fully present. And when I get someone's information, it's like, we're actually going to hang out after this encounter because we actually remember this. And this wasn't just like in the bathroom when we were drunk. It's like, no, we actually connected about something that was deep and that felt so good. And now we get to be friends outside of just partying.
I love all of this. You're speaking my love language here. I feel super similarly. I did my party girl days in my late teens, early 20s, was clubbing in New York. I've lived so many different lives. It is kind of
Oh,
wild.
it's the best.
Like there was a point where I was literally like, when Instagram first came out, was like on the promo pictures for clubs when I was underage, like dancing on tables with bottles. Like that's the level of party girl I was for a minute. But to your point, it was like going out used to be about disconnecting. It used to be about, oh, I had a really hard week. I'm stressed. I'm tired. Like, let's go, versus now, instead of going out to disconnect, my intention is to go out to connect.
Yeah.
How can I connect so deeply to myself? And by connecting deeply to myself, now have the ability to deeply connect with others if that's what I so choose, right?
Yeah.
But being in that place of like, I go out and I still do. I'm like, ooh, I had a tough week. I want to fucking move my body
Yeah.
and get it out.
It's
Like
like different when you're coming from that energy because you're still getting that same, like, okay, I had a hard week. Like, okay, I could go to numb, distract, engage in some of these things that are media focused or alcohol focused or numbing with sex, whatever numbing thing, you could just move to that and be like,
yeah,
I'm just going to throw myself into this. Or you could be like, okay, what if this is telling me something and I
yeah.
could like move this through my body? I imagine after these nights, you're like, I feel better. I feel more myself. I feel more connected. I feel more present. And then you wake up, like if you're on an exotic dance on a Friday night, you wake up on Saturday and you're like, I feel good. Like, let's go. Like another day of the weekend to be able to optimize your time, to be able to like just pour back into yourself so deeply.
I think also another point to that is like if you're choosing the numbing agents, right? The numb, suppress, avoid, distract, any of those, like it doesn't solve the problem. You're not actually moving through it. You're just postponing it. Again, back to what you resist persists. So you get blackout drunk, you had a hard week. The next day, all of that shit is still in your body. You didn't move through it. So you still, on top of being hungover, on top of being exhausted, on top of feeling like shit, you also still have all of that pent up energy that you didn't dissipate versus what you're saying, like, from all the way back earlier, it's like sitting with it and or like letting it move through and out.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think about too, it's regulation can come from expression. And so it's like, hey, let's say you are someone that's at a place where you're like, I don't really want to go dance, or I'm not really at a level where I'm wanting to go to ecstatic dance. Maybe I'm a beginner dancer and that's where you're at. There's so many ways to express. Can you sing? Can you write? Can you like be able to just do something with some of that energy and community? You could go to like a poetry slam or like a cacao place or
or
like
even or even go on a walk. Like go for a walk around your block, move your body, period.
yeah.
You don't have to, I mean, moving your hips and all that feels amazing, but if you have stuck energy, just go on a walk.
Absolutely, because it just needs to go somewhere. It really needs to go somewhere, and I think that it's sometimes the last thing that we wanna do, but that's the medicine so oftentimes, and so if you're feeling really stuck and shut down in that way, a lot of times those, like, micro movements, I always talk about it, it's like a de-thawing or, like, unfreezing you when you're able to invite in like, just small movements and small habits and routines to just be able to be like, "These are just, like, nurturing me and supporting me and meeting me where I'm at, and we'll go from there and see what makes you feel better." It's like, just try it and then see.
I love that. And I think also to touch on intentionality, right? Like when you go out, you set an intention, you have clarity around what are you wanting to feel in this experience. When people ask, oh, like, what does that mean? I'm like, well, your intentions can be different. And I'm like, all right, here's some examples.
Mhm.
Sometimes when I go out, my intention is, let's say you and I are meeting up for the first time, we're going out. Very likely my intention is going to be, I want to connect with you. So I'm going to be very clear if there's guys hitting on me and there's
Mhm.
people wanting to hang out and there's all these things, I'm going to probably be like, you know what? That's not what tonight's about. Tonight's about this connection. It can shift, it can change, but just having clarity. And, or a lot of times I go out solo. Like sometimes my intention is I want to meet people. I want to connect. I want to be a little social butterfly and see what magic can unfold with whoever I meet. Sometimes I go out and my intention is like this Friday, I'm flying to New York to go see one of my favorite artists. And my intention is I don't want to talk to anybody. I want to be front and center and I want it to be like me and the artist all night
Yeah.
long with blinders on. And that's my intention.
Beautiful. That's so beautiful.
But I think that having some sort of direction and clarity and intention around versus, I mean, I remember for the longest time, especially in my party girl days, and it's so funny. We talk about numb, suppress, avoid, all these
Mm.
things, and I often leave out sex, but you brought it back in, and now thinking back to my early party girl days and the ways that I used to show up, I cared so much about external validation.
Mhm.
If I didn't meet a cute guy that was interested in me, it doesn't matter how great the night was, how much fun I had, I would go home sad because subconsciously, all I wanted from the evening was to meet someone. That's all I
Yeah.
wanted.
And I think it's like the same core thing of like, I'm looking for this thing outside of me to make something inside of me feel better. And I
Yeah,
think when we're making our own reality, in a sense, we're going and attending like conscious events and things, we're able to be like, I'm not looking for anything outside of me to make me feel better. I'm actually looking to move with this, or I'm looking to have this event or this experience help really just give me the result that I'm looking for, in the way of helping me feel better from the week or support my week or deepen connection for the week or whatever it is. But it's like you're not looking for something to like
yeah.
fix the inside. You're just being like, I'm just going because I want to go, or because, the intentions are different because it's not looking for external validation.
I love that. I feel like there's certain people that are on the spiritual path that are very averse to going to low vibe events.
Mhm.
So what that means for those who don't know is like there are people that are on this path that will only go to the conscious events. They'll only go to the ecstatic dance and things like you and I go to. I have a lot of people in my world that are like, oh, I don't know how you do that. Like, I don't like the energy there. It's too much. And there's a couple of things about that. I think that one, I always protect my energy. Like I'm very, very sensitive in crowds. I did a post about this yesterday about like not feeling the energy of the people around me and like you checking in and listening to your intuition and honoring that. Like that's all a part of it. But I do think that there's something really fascinating to people that aren't as connected to this type of work and aren't actually aware of what somatic movement is. And yet, look at what people gravitate to. People gravitate to shows and singing and dancing and festivals. And you're like, oh, because it feels good, doesn't it? What?
That might be the only time that like that person gets to express and feel and move. And even if you're doing it with alcohol, it's like that is a step towards just moving and doing
Yeah.
that. And so it could be like a training wheels thing and then eventually get more comfortable without it. But there's something to be said about that. And I think what speaks to me about what you're saying is like your perspective on going out is grounded in the earth while also being in your own frequency too.
Mhm.
That speaks back to what we were talking about of like you need the full spectrum. And it's like if you take yourself out of all other events and just put yourself in these places, it's like you're only seeing one sample size of like
Yeah.
the human experience. And like there's this whole range of the human experience. And there's all these people that are attending festivals and events that like need this embodiment infused within it. And it's like to bring it
Well,
to be like, hey, I'm free in my body. You can be too. Let's dance together and let's bring this in. It's not just like siloing ourselves in places where only people are acting just like us.
Yeah, yeah. And I was just gonna say, like, I'm sure because this happens to me all the time. I imagine you probably get the same thing. Like, by you showing up to these spaces, being embodied, being that example, other people are like, whoa, you're giving people permission to do the same. They're like, wow, you really don't give a shit what anyone else
Yeah.
thinks. Like, you're really in it, huh? And I'm like, hell yeah, I am. Come
You're like,
on, let's
yeah.
go.
Like, come with, yeah, no, let me show you. It'll be fun. Even just like that expression is an invitation, it's not
Yeah,
like, and it's just like a permission slip for people to be like, hey, you can bring all of your authenticity. And really that infusion is like, it's so beautiful to be able to see. And people notice, people really feel the energy of your own presence in your body. Like we were talking about earlier. It's like, I was in the bathroom at a bar the other weekend and I was sober, of course, so no alcohol or anything. And this girl came up to me and she's like, I just wanted to say I love the way your body moves. And I hope like my body can look like that at some point. And not like in the sense of size or anything like that, but just like
yeah,
the sense of comfortability. And I
yeah.
was like, girl, like, let's go out there and dance. And I was like, let's do it,
Yeah.
And it's just like beautiful to be having those conversations in the bathroom instead of just like, you
No, no,
know,
you don't.
whatever. It's like that was a very intentional compliment. And it's like, this is a stranger and I'll probably never see her again. But it meant a lot to me because I was like, "Whew, yeah, you don't know how much it's taken for me to get to
Yeah,
this place that I'm like feel so free in these settings and like also love the way I move. It's like that takes a certain
yeah,
level
like,
of
it
like
feels good.
comfortability with my own inner work of not judging myself in any way I move. And I was chatting to a friend the other day about this and I was like, I used to like go out or go somewhere. And then later I would be thinking about like, ooh, did I say that wrong? Or did I ask this question weird? Or like I would be thinking about how uncomfortable I felt in my own skin. And now it's like I can do the most heinous dance move in the world and I would not think about it tomorrow. I would literally just be like, it was what it was. It came through. Like, I don't really know what that
Yeah.
was, but we're in like acceptance of it because it's just part of the process.
Yeah, man, I love that. I think that there aren't enough people out there like us doing this type of work and showing up the way that we show up in these spaces. Like these spaces need more of this energy because it is infectious. Because I guarantee you that girl from now on, when she goes out, she probably is going to think about you and be like, oh, I have a really interesting story that ties into that. I remember the first time I ever went to ecstatic dance, there was this one girl. I was a little uncomfortable. I grew up as a dancer, but still, ecstatic dance is intimidating. The first time I ever went, I was like, whoa, these people are like really comfortable in their body. It's like,
Really
whoa.
comfortably.
And I remember there was this one girl, and her energy was like a fucking butterfly. She was floating around the room and hugging everyone and skipping and dancing. And like, I couldn't take my eyes off of her. She was just magnetic. I never got that image of her out of my head. I was like, wow, like if I could be like that, like, whoa, like that
Well,
would be crazy.
that's like the most beautiful realm to play in for yourself too, because a lot of people could have that experience and be like, I will never be like that. I'm so jealous of her. I'm going to throw shade at her or like, how dare she be like that or whatever. And that's one way to look at it. But another way to
Right.
look at it is like you did, where you're like, this is expansion. You're like,
Yeah.
oh my God, like this is the template. I can hold on to this and be like,
That's possible.
one person's
Whoa.
body and nervous system can do that, then mine can too. And like she probably has done a lot to get to that point that she's like, her energy is that good and she's moving that way. And it's like, it's just a testament to what's possible for anyone. I think when you view it like that, it's like,
Yeah.
there's no one that's better or worse than you at dancing. It's like everyone's just in a different place with like their expression of it. And you can learn to be just like anyone else is. And again, back to like, they've put time into that, like
Yeah.
the energy, the expression,
Well,
the
well, it
movement.
was wild. So a couple years later, I was at an ecstatic dance, and at the end of the dance, somebody came up to me and reflected back to me the exact words that I thought about this girl. He was like, I was watching you on the dance floor, and like not in like a sexual way or anything, like in the same exact like admiration. He was like, I'm so inspired by the way that you move and show up and like, and I was like, I didn't. when I used to go out, I was performing.
Yeah.
I was like, who's looking at me? How do I look? Am I hot? Am I sexy? Like,
Yeah.
oh,
Yeah.
where's that guy? Oh, is that guy looking? Like, it's like a whole fucking performance versus I don't even notice like what's
Mm.
happening around me. I'm just so in my energy. And if you come into my field and you make eye contact with me and it's a yes, and we end up having a connection together, then beautiful. But I'm not like I've cultivated, and it took a lot, a lot of work to get to a place where I'm like, I truly have that inside of me. And I don't need it from the external. And I don't want it from the external.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. It's wild too how quick, like, it can take so much work to get to that place, and it also can go so quickly too. Like,
Yeah.
if someone is just starting out with this and they do commit to like dancing once a week or dancing once a day, or so much can change in a year. Festivals are great markers for me. If I attend a festival every year, I'll talk to my friends and be like, oh my God, I showed up so differently this year than I showed up the previous year.
Yeah.
And that's like beautiful to be able to track, because you can really tell, like, what was I worried about at that festival or that concert or whatever. And then like a year later, you're like, I wasn't worried about any of those things. I was just so present and so in my body and so connected. And it's like, that's so great to be able to really experience like those changes within yourself. You literally, like you said, became that
Yeah.
girl, like very similar in that way. And I've had experiences like that too, where certain women used to like intimidate me on the dance floor because I was like, oh, they're so good and they're so embodied. And now I'm like, I'm just dancing next to them. And like,
Yeah.
we're in it together. And those women are usually the women I like make really good friends with after, because we were just like throwing down on the dance floor. And that's so fun to be able to experience. And like, you don't even know them, but you can speak without words, which I think is a whole beautiful thing in itself.
Oh, I love that so much. Well, I want to touch on quickly like community and the
Yeah.
power of community and what that looks like, especially in the phase of life that you're in. And I'm curious, what does community mean to you? What does that look like in your world right
Yeah.
now?
Yeah, it's so wild how big of a part of my world it's become in the last, honestly, I would say 6 months to a year. I've always valued community, but a lot of times it was like communities that you didn't choose, in the sense that it's like your college friends or people that you connected with from grad school or like whatever. And it's like some of those people are super aligned like to this day. And some of them just aren't in the same way. As I've gotten later into my 20s, the more I've been like, I really want to call an intentional community. And at the start of this year, that was something that I put it on a list of something that I was like, I want to call this in. And not just like I already had a few best friends that were like my people here in San Diego, but I really wanted to feel that of like co-ed community. Like, what is
Yeah.
that like to like, I kind of had that feel of college, but then with it being adult and with it being like people that are into health and wellness, that are into prioritizing their nervous system, that are into dance, that are into
Yeah.
spirituality, that are curious, that are deep, like all these things. I was like, there has to like this exists. I know it does. And really like so much of the community that I have built has been born from saying yes to things that are out of my comfort zone, that I get a small intuition or ping to like go check out. So a great example of that is there is a sober community here in San Diego called Pink Seven. They have different events and parties, and they had a sober party. Oh, when was it? Like, I want to say beginning of summer-ish. And I was supposed to go with a friend. She wasn't able to make it. I was supposed to go with another friend. He wasn't able to make it. And I had my ticket already. And I was like, do I go alone? This is a sober party. Like, everyone's going to be sober. Like, it's not something where it's just a bar where you can just sneak in and like, no one will notice if you're by yourself. But I was like, probably people will notice. And so I just committed to going alone. My guy friend who canceled ended up actually coming with me like halfway through. And he ended up knowing everyone from the sober community. And so it was like he was a good bridge. But through that, like I met people and then went to another event and brought some of my friends with me to that event. And then we met all of these more people. And it's just branched off into this like really big community of a variety of people. Like, again, it's not just sober people, it's also people that drink, it's also people that still go
Yeah.
out. It's like very diverse in that way, but it's really built. And I think where I find that I found that was following my authenticity and being willing to be so uncomfortable, but then also just being willing to say yes to different things. Because after those experiences, those initial experiences, there was a lot of yeses. We were joking that August was the month of yes. We were saying, like, we're just going to say yes as much as possible and just continue going to things and continue doing things.
Yeah.
But through that, I was put in situations that I typically wouldn't be in socially. And I was able to like, expand and grow. And then just back to everything we're talking about, just stay in my authenticity, really know my values, know my yes and no when it comes to like drinking and stuff. I was in
Yeah.
a lot of spaces that were bars or were places that were like DJ sets. So there's
Yeah.
different things going on substance wise or alcohol wise. And I was able to be like, well, what is my true north? How can
Yeah.
and knowing that like all of the people in all of the community will find me. But I also, you have to, there's the quote that I was looking at today that was like, opportunity dances with those on the dance floor. And it's the same thing
Oh
with
my
like,
God, I love that.
no, I love it because it's like dance, but it's also like,
But it's like, how can I be in integrity
yes.
regardless of what's going on around me?
Yeah, and it's like knowing that like, you have to be out there on the dance floor for you to meet your community. Like if
Yeah.
you're not out there, you're
Yeah.
not going to meet people. It is uncomfortable, and sometimes I do want to go to bed at 9, and instead I'm like out doing something with friends. But I'm also like, this is something that I value so much, and I
Yeah.
know that like, for example, this summer, the energy of that this summer of saying yes so much, it's not going to last forever. Like we're still going
Yeah.
to have fall, we're still going to have winter, but I wanted to build this foundation of community. So for a time period, I was saying yes more. I was still honoring my body, I was still honoring my nervous system,
Yeah.
but I was like able to do it in a way that was like, okay, again, to talk about like becoming the person you want to be of like, if I was someone that was super social and had a vibrant community, where would I be? Who would I be
Yeah.
talking to?
Yeah.
How much would I be engaging with people when I'm there? And like doing some of that, of being able to be like, okay, I'm just going to put myself out there a lot and see what happens. And it's like, the more you put yourself out there in an authentic way, you're a magnet to people
Yeah.
that are like also looking for community.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. It's also, I think, again, about there's seasonality to it for sure. Like there's a season for everything, but I think the intention as well of what you're desiring in this chapter, like for you, where you're like, I'm really looking to build community. So, okay, well, you can sit there and say, I want community. I want community. You can manifest community. You could do your mantras. You could do your tapping. You can do all your shit. But until you actually walk out the door and put yourself in a position to meet community, you're not going to. I think also on the flip side of things, I'm going through a season right now of the complete opposite, where I've been traveling, I've been nomadic, and I've had my community and this and that. And now I'm in a season of like, put my head down and fucking grind to build what I'm trying to build. Because I'm saying
Absolutely.
I want to be my own boss and I want to have this go and this go and this go. And if I'm out all the time, like spreading my energy everywhere, I'm not going to get the goals that I want. But also, this is a season too. Like right now, I'm working a 9 to 5. I got off of work right at 6. I prepped for this podcast. I have this podcast. This is episode 19. I'm editing episode 18 right after this. Then I have a little bit of work. Then I go to bed. Then I wake up. Then I go like, and I'm like, my days, I've been in this season and that's what it's been. And I'm okay with that because I have right now, like the goal of what I'm working towards. And I'm doing the action of what I want in order to achieve that goal, you know?
Absolutely. It's like everything you're describing is like exactly what was going on for me last spring when I was working a full-time job and building my business full
Yeah.
time. And then it's like now that I'm full time with my business and I don't have two things to juggle, I was like, "Ooh, what do I want to create now?" And then it's like, "Okay, this," but then it's also like I'm very um understanding of that in that sense that like it is a season. It's
Yeah.
like this is like a season or an era in that sense. And then it's like, okay, fall is coming, like things are getting slower. It's like, okay, refocus. Like what is the focus now? And also knowing that like when you have this communities built and things, it's like they're not going anywhere.
Yeah.
They're not going anywhere. There's always an abundance of community. This was a huge mindset shift for me where I'm like,
Yeah.
community is abundant. People that love you want you
Abundant.
are abundant.
Abundant.
And so it's like if that were to be true, it's like you can pull back after,
And
initially having that. And then
and it's gonna shift and change. Like the community that I initially built in LA, like my fucking people, I'm going back to LA next month. And I know people have moved and things have shifted and changed. But something that I've learned on my travels as I've been moving around, and specifically I've been going to ecstatic dances like all around the world, which you would love. You would love it.
take me
But
with you.
well, dude, it's amazing. But what I've found is that I do all this by myself, right? I go to events, I go to house parties, I go to things by myself. Like if I go with someone, it's weird. But in doing that and putting myself in that position over and over and over again, what I'm coming to realize is I can be in a new location for 2 days and I know exactly how to find my people
Yeah.
immediately. Immediately. Like I was in Nashville for a week over the summer and I was like, yo, I could move here tomorrow and like I already found my tribe. I was in Boulder, same thing. Denver, same thing. Like everywhere I go and I'm like, okay, this is just it's good information. It's good
Well, it's also
information to
like,
know. Like,
God, you've shown yourself that you can do that.
yeah.
And that's created that nervous system capacity. And I've done something similar in the fact that I've lived in 4 different states. And so with
Yeah.
that, like every time rebuilding community, and each at different chapters. And it's like, once you show yourself you can do that through building community wherever you are right now, then you can take that with you because that, like, no one can take that from you because it's you. Like, you
Yeah.
are what is establishing community.
Yeah.
Like your frequency, your energy is what draws people to you. And you're always
Totally.
able to have it and be able to be like, okay, it doesn't matter where I am, I can be happy and I can find my people. And it's like
Yeah.
one of the pillars to mental health is community and having your people that you feel like you can bring all parts of yourself to and with.
I mean, we could teach a whole fucking workshop on this together. Let's chat offline. I hear so many people, especially around our age group, where some people are getting married, some people are having kids. There's a very distinct shift where it's like we're not in our early 20s anymore, but we're not yet in that chapter of our lives. And I've heard from so many people that they're like, I don't know how to make friends anymore. Like, ah. And I think let this just be a reminder if you're feeling that energy that going out, putting yourself in those positions, like getting comfortable with yourself, being your authentic self, like saying yes, like these are all little practices and steps that you can tangibly do tomorrow. That if you're feeling alone and you feel like you don't have your people, like you can find them, but don't get blackout drunk and go to a bar and say, oh no, I can't make friends.
Yeah. And I think too, I'm dying laughing. I I feel like too, and then we're a great example of this. Like, I know some people resist the social media presence thing because their own stuff of they don't like social media or whatever. But from my experience, the more that you can show up on social media as yourself,
Yeah.
the more people you meet. And like for context, my Instagram, that is my Instagram for my somatic business and like all of my stuff about the nervous system, it used to be a food Instagram because I was vegan and I had a food Instagram. And I met so much community through that account. And this account has evolved with me and all of my evolutions. But like I have met like my best friend in Colorado, my best friend in Hawaii, my best friend here, like all of them have been online through Instagram. I just think it's like, don't knock it because there is so much going on and we have so much access to being able to connect with people online than ever before. And so it's like there is a lot there where you can find people. Like if you have some weird like niche that you're obsessed with, and I say weird loosely because we're all weird, but like if you have something that's like strange and out there and you're like, no one in my area is into this. I say this as someone who grew up in Kansas where no one was into anything I was into. You can find someone
Your
online.
people are out there.
Yeah, you can find someone online that like has the same interest or like
Yeah.
even just a group to meet up with of like maybe you're meeting the people in person, but you go to this group that like meets up and goes to mocktail hours or like something and you just chat.
I think this is so important because we're very lucky that we live in places like, I'm bouncing between Miami, New York, LA, or in San Diego. Like, yeah, there are definitely places where people feel like, wow, there's nobody here. And this is how I felt growing up. I was just like, I feel so different. I don't connect with anybody. There was just this massive, massive, massive disconnect. And to your point, I think that it's so beautiful. There's so much access and ability. And even if you're not feeling comfortable showing up, on your social media, like join a program, join a group, get
A
involved,
membership, like
even digitally in something that lights you up that you feel connected to. I just did an online course And we met every week, once a week. And then all the people in the group, like we would message each other outside because we all had similar interests. We were all like working on the same skill and wanted to connect with each other. You and me
Yeah.
met through social media. I guess that one of us saw what the other one was posting and we were like, wow, that's exactly how I live. I resonate. We message back and forth. And then years later, it's like, I mean, I feel like we could hang out tomorrow and it's going to be like we've known each other
Yeah.
forever.
Exactly. And it's like we just connected on social media 2 years ago. And it's like, yeah. So I think that's like really, really important to just like consider even like a Bumble BFF. I met one of my best friends in Hawaii off of Bumble BFF. I was just like looking for friends. I had just moved to Hawaii and I was like, like where are like-minded people?
Yeah.
And through that, like, yeah, I met two of my best friends in the world. And it's like, I'm so thankful. And it's like, who knew a dating app could provide friends in that way? And it's like
So
friends that are
amazing.
really aligned to this day. Like I literally talked on the phone to one of my best friends who's in Bali now yesterday for an hour. And it's like, we are friends because of Bumble BFF. And
Yeah.
that would be so out of my comfort zone years ago. And it's like each time you do something that's more out of your comfort zone when it comes to putting yourself out there with 3D, like I always find I am like so rewarded. Like so
So,
rewarded, like
yeah.
tenfold of like, okay, I was uncomfortable for 30 seconds or 2 minutes making conversation. And then after that, it's like one of my best friends forever.
Oh, I love this. Well, if people want to connect with you online, what is the best way for people to get in touch with you? Do you have anything upcoming or things that people can get excited about or be a part of? I would love for you to share any of that.
Yeah. So my Instagram is Alchemy by Alexis. That's also the name of my business. You can find my business at alchemybyalexis.com. And so right now I do one-on-one sessions with people. So it's somatic coaching. So branched away from therapy and just doing coaching with people, but working with the nervous system, working with all of those different responses to be able to help people heal and feel more embodied, feel more free, feel more peace, all of those things. And I'm actually launching a membership soon with all these different somatic practices. There's music, they're very experiential. So anywhere from 10 to 20-minute practices, and there's going to be a whole library of them. So super excited to be launching that soon. So connect with me on Instagram and you'll get all the details about when that launches.
I'll put all the links to things down in the show notes here. Alexis, this was so amazing. I'm so happy to have had you. Guys, if you are listening on Spotify, please be sure to subscribe. If you're on YouTube, same deal. Engage. We're AmandaFest Podcast on Instagram. I would love to hear any of your thoughts, reflections, and please feel free to reach out to either Alexis or I and let us know how this episode landed with you. But Alexis, thank you so, 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 so much for being here today. I can't
Thank
wait
you
to
so
connect in
much.
the 3D
It's been,
and dance.
yes, all the dancing.
Have a good one. Bye, guys.
Bye.